Welcome to CX Wise, the podcast where we share wisdom, insights, stories, and expertise from the world of customer experience. I'm your host, Nathan Bennett, and you're about to hear real-world experiences and practical advice that will elevate your CX game, no matter your title and no matter your industry. Now, let's get wise. My guest today has been educating audiences on a variety of CX topics since 2015. As a CX speaker, certified facilitator, Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, and much more, he is up to crush anything CX related. He's a CX practitioner. He's been on ICMI's top CX thought leader list for over 5 years and running. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the incomparable Nate Brown. Nate, how are you today?
I got goose pimples, Nate. Your voice is incredible. What an intro.
Listen, I've got to do something because I cannot compete with the hat. I wish I had a hat that would fit my gigantic head, but I don't. But hey, man, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. On the scale of CX wisdom, I'm definitely a neophyte, but I love this work. I love learning everything I can from the incredible people, the incredible brands that are doing CX really well. I'm just a student of this. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you, Nate.
Well, today the student has become the master, my friend, as I'm sure our listeners will experience throughout this conversation. There's so much to unpack, so let's get down to business. As always, we like to get on the same page with our guests by defining our terms. So how does Nate Brown define customer experience?
What a great question. And I do love the Forrester definition, paraphrase slightly here, the thoughts and perceptions that people have towards a brand. So I love that idea of thoughts and feelings and perceptions. It's that combination of the left brain, the really scientific elements of CX, with the analytics and the change management and the project management and all that meaty stuff, with the incredibly important right brain feelings and perceptions and relationships. I mean, at the end of the day, really what we're trying to do here is to cultivate great feelings about the brands that we serve. But there's so much science in how we do that. So I love how that definition really brings those two concepts together.
I kind of got goosebumps a little bit when you said what we're trying to do here is cultivate feelings. I love that. And I've never thought about that before from a brand perspective. And since you brought it up, one of my questions was going to be, you've talked about CX being the yin and yang of science and art, and which is why it appeals to you so much. And I'd love for you to be able to unpack that for us a little bit more. Talk about the science of it and talk about the art of it. And what does that mean to you?
Oh, yeah. Well, the science to me, it's going to be that execution engine, that idea of demonstrating the ROI of CX work and making it stick inside of a business through great change management. I love using the John Coder model of leading change, which is that idea of establishing a sense of urgency. We got to light a fire here because otherwise nobody's going to change. We got to make people realize we cannot keep living the way we're living. We can't keep serving our customers the way we're serving them. We have to change, and here's why. Then what's step 2 on the John Coder model? It's establishing a strong CX change coalition. This work cannot be done in a vacuum. It cannot be done by some peripheral CX leader or even a team of quote-unquote CX people. This is work you have to give away, and it has to penetrate throughout the business in order to make a significant difference to the customer at the end of the day. So there's all this science around change management and all of those elements. But then on the other side, on the more artistic side, what we're doing here, we're developing great connections. It's connections that really matter. We're trying to earn loyalty. And if we think about this period of history, where we're kind of in this skimpflation period economically, or in this hyper-competitive global marketplace, I mean, what's going to matter? We're having intelligence just ripped off in front of us. There's nothing sacred anymore except great relationships. And that's where loyalty is going to be earned. So that's the artistic element of this work. And you can't do one without the other. Loyalty is earned. Those relationships are earned through the science of the work. So it's just awesome to see the two really play off of each other.
Yeah. And when I think about the art of it, it's almost that element of, and maybe disagree with me, and if you do, that's fine. It's almost that element of the thing that can't be taught almost. It's almost the intrinsic feeling or the inherent part of it. You can learn the science part, but the art part is a little bit more subjective. For an example, I was talking to a contact center supervisor about how she finds the right folks to be her care agents. And I said, what do you look for in these people? Because this is not an easy job. And she said, the one thing I look for that I can't teach them, they either have it or they don't, is empathy. And I thought that was huge. Because it's that willingness to help, that willingness to identify with somebody else's problem and want to try and fix it. So there's a little bit of the artistry there too, yeah?
Yeah, we've had extensive debates on if empathy can be taught or ultimately trained into a person. And I believe that yes, it can, but over a significant duration of time through an incredibly sophisticated training program. So is it worth it when we know there's people out there that have that gift? And I mean, customer service folks, I call them knowledge curators. That's my favorite term for the word of agent or our customer service representative, because ultimately what they're doing, they're taking the robust offerings of the business, all these complicated dots, and they're deciphering them and distilling them into a sensible format and marrying that with the needs of this person, this complicated person who is an individual, and their experience needs to be personalized. So we're trying to navigate them towards their definition of success. So that knowledge curator gets to learn deeply the needs of that person. What is their definition of success? Learns deeply the capabilities of the business and creates this mini marriage ceremony that is the customer service interaction. And they're the officiant. And only they can do that. But they're not the bride. They're not the star of the show. I love how StoryBrand talks about the hero of the story is the customer. Guide. And it's such a exciting and philosophically invigorating role if we embrace that and if we get our people excited about that and give them autonomy to do this work really well. We should not be troubled by the fact that we're not the hero of the story in the work of customer service. It should invigorate us, but only those people that have that servant heart mentality, that empathy in them, they're the ones that are going to go deep to understand the needs of that customer, to guide them through towards their definition of success. If somebody's not motivated to do that, they are not going to enjoy this work. And they're not going to be good at it.
Man, you speak almost like a pastor or something like that. Like I'm getting so motivated by just listening to you. Like I love it. So one of the things I think is unique about you is that not every CX visionary has had the hands-on experiences in the trenches of customer service and customer experience like you have. But you've been there. You've been on the front lines of customer experience. Can you tell us a little bit about those origins and how that's impacted your passion for CX since then?
Yeah, my Spider-Man got bit by a spider in the museum store. Yeah. So I was selling postage meters on the streets of Jacksonville, Florida. Ended up not being very good at selling postage meters in the strip malls. I sold like one, and he actually duped me into buying an insurance policy, which was significantly higher value than the postage meter. So it really wasn't a win in that case.
Who was selling whom?
Exactly. This guy was a genius. But I loved the customer service element. I discovered even then, as 23-year-old, fresh out of college, clueless Nate Brown, that I really enjoyed coming in and understanding the needs of these customers, these existing customers, and how can we grow? How can we foster this partnership? So that next role, I looked for that customer service thing and found it at this little great startup called Pure Safety. And it was helping folks to be safe in their jobs. It was an online learning capability with all this great safety training to make sure that folks could operate well within their workplaces. And I loved it. I mean, I came alive in this customer service role and did that for years and years. And it invigorated me, the impact that I was making through this meaningful brand purpose of keeping folks safe. So ended up taking ownership of that team and growing into that supervisory role, and then became more of that director as we acquired other software and other teams into us. But one day was kind of looking around and was like, we're just sitting here waiting for tickets to come in. What the heck are we doing? Like, why are we being so reactive in the way that we think about and treat these customers? Why can't we get upstream and try to reduce some of this friction? And I was turned on in 2015 to The Effortless Experience by Matthew Dixon and the Corporate Executive Board and Rick DeLisi. And that it just opened my eyes to the world of customer experience. And everything changed for me that year in 2015.
And your passion there fed to so many other experiences to impact other people as well. And very significantly, the community of CX Accelerator. Can you talk about CX Accelerator? What started you to think about growing this community? Tell our listeners about it. And maybe if you can share some stories that you've learned through that community, we'd love to hear them.
Well, thank you, Nate. I mean, goodness. So I was inside a good organization, but I was struggling as a new CX professional and just needed to have that iron sharpening iron effect and to have that motivation that could only come from outside the walls of my office building. And I was desperate for this community, for this thing that was growing inside of me, this customer experience fire that was welling, but I was finding that it was not being fed inside of my own organization. I was giving it away so much, and it was not being fed back into me. So CX Accelerator, I've just found some incredible folks, some like-minded people, Jeremy Walken, Jenny Dempsey, Justin Robbins, Kay Chapman, Erica Moroyce, Becky Roman, and it was just a Slack channel. And it just grew so quickly. Started really with contact center folks, but then really spread into kind of that startup CX world of all these great, Murphy Frazier, came to us at that time, and just so many folks that were looking for this type of community to happen. And I mean, just the edification that we were able to provide to each other in those moments, just the encouragement, the wisdom of I tried this, it didn't work. But then 2 weeks later, I tried this and this stuck. Who would have thought, that idea of experimentation in a safe place? Yeah. I love LinkedIn, but LinkedIn's where you go to be like, I'm amazing.
Yeah, look at me. I'm all shiny. Yep.
You don't get to be like, oh, kind of messed up here. That's more important. We learn more from those moments of vulnerability and experimentation than we learn from I'm up on a pedestal right now. We learn way more in those safe places. So we need these communities. And CX Accelerator has just been that for so many folks. And I'm just so grateful for that journey. So, I mean, it's a nonprofit. It's free and will always be free to its members. It's just meant to be a good, helpful thing for those that are pursuing CX careers in this space. And thank you for letting me talk about it, Nate. That's very gracious of you. Oh my gosh.
No, absolutely, man. I mean, that's why we're here. I'm interested to know if you can pinpoint a key learning or takeaway that you're like, man, this was because I was involved in the CX Accelerator community members made this light bulb go off for me in this way. Can you think of one example of something like that was revelatory because of that community?
It was a combination of a mentor of mine named Debbie Hummel and the CX Accelerator community that was modeling for me a different behavior, a much more inclusive way of doing this work that finally happened to open the floodgates in my mind for why I was really failing at that time as a young CX leader. And I mean, I was doing what I've been now calling the Moses model of CX, which is me absorbing everything into myself and coming down from Mount Sinai with the golden tablets of voice of customer data and slamming down in front of the organization and saying, all of you suck. You failed the customer here. You shouldn't be in this job. How did this even happen? You're all terrible. We have to do a much better job. And you can imagine how motivating that was. I grew a chip on my shoulder because I was given a CX title. And I'm embarrassed to admit that, but I had this growing fire in me of I want to be an amazing CX person. And I was given that first extension of quote unquote a CX role. Ironically, I was way better at it when I didn't have the CX job because I was just organically growing it. I was just excited about it. And I was bringing people in to a CX change coalition. Even though I didn't have the words for it at the time, I was growing this force of CX organic folks in the business and we were kicking arse. So as soon as I was given the title, it broke in my head. And I started doing things opposite of the way I needed to do them. And I remember I was telling Debbie, I was like, I feel like every day I have to gird myself for war and come in for a battle. And she's like, who are you fighting? These are your peers, you idiot. She didn't say that, but it was broke in my mind. I thought the problem was everybody else. The problem was me. I'm coming in and I'm forcing all of them to adopt this defensive posture because of the way I'm acting and because of my attempts to absorb all CX into me and my function. When in fact, I needed to be a cheerleader. I needed to be giving that work away and putting it into other folks, not being worried about the credit of the work and it being attributed to the quote unquote CX banner. But I didn't have the mentality. I didn't have the metrics that could back that up. So here I am just desperate to prove myself and to prove the role of CX. And in that, I was ruining it for everybody. So it was Debbie and it was that community that was modeling out this better behavior and demonstrating how the collaborative, inclusive approach to CX was working. And that is the way to go. And ever since then, that's absolutely been what I've adopted in terms of a practitioner. And as I've come in and helped organizations set up a CX initiative of some kind, it's rooted in more of that Gandalf mentality of let's bring together the fellowship. Let's bring the hobbits and the dwarfs and the elves who would never work together ever. They hate each other. But now the ring is more important. The customer, the hero of the story, is more important. So we're going to put these petty BS politics aside, and we're going to focus on what matters here, because that's more important. And we're going to develop a sense of pride and a sense of acceptance of one another because of our ability to serve the customer really well. So we're going to transcend those negative relationships that we used to have because there's something more important, and it's the way that this business can uniquely serve its customers.
I think now's the perfect time to segue into employee experience based off of what you just shared with us.
Yeah.
Because we can't talk about customer experience without first talking about employee experience. And to do that, I wanted to explore two things that are close to your heart: pickleball and ice cream. So let's start with pickleball. For all of you folks out there who may not know about pickleball, I'm sure Nate will enlighten you. But after he does that, I want you to tell us what pickleball or how pickleball informs how we think about employee experience.
Oh, goodness. Oh, wow. All right. Thank you, Nate. Well, yeah. So, I mean, pickleball is by far the fastest growing sport in the country. And it's been sitting there dormant since the 1960s. So what the heck happened? Why is this goofy sport that used to just be played in the gymnasiums of elementary schools and in senior citizen retirement communities, why is this now penetrating the heart of the nation and got Drew Brees and LeBron James and all of them buying up major league pickleball teams? Well, I mean, if you think about the incredible shared dynamic social experience that you're having when playing this sport, which, by the way, it's like a combination of ping pong because you're up at the net with these fast hand battles, and then tennis because you're back there hitting more ground strokes, but you're really getting this amazing volleys. You're getting a longer point. The ball moves slower, so everybody can play. You're not having to run all over the place. It's more about the skill of the game and the placement of the ball. So everybody can play. And there's this incredible equalizing force in the sport called the kitchen. And it allows anybody to reset the ball into a safe place on the court so that the ball cannot be attacked. So what it means is that the 80-year-old woman in the knee brace can go out there, and if she knows what she's doing, she can dismantle the jacked up 25-year-old frat boy that came out there with his buddies. And it's so fun to watch because knowledge is way more important in this sport than power. It's fun to see it play out, but it's such an inclusive sport. And all of a sudden you have that 80-year-old woman in the knee brace and the frat boy, they're friends and they're hanging out and they're having this dynamic shared social experience. They're speaking the same language, 002, Ernie, just nasty Nelson to you. There's this tribal language element that happens with the cult of pickleball that's incredible. And it gives you this amazing sense of identity. So it's no wonder that this sport has exploded now. It exploded during the pandemic when we were having two pandemics. We were having the pandemic of loneliness and the pandemic. So here's the hook. Here's the navigation back. Why are we not doing this in the workplace more? I mean, the levers are the same. Like we're trying in our workplace to create this dynamic shared social experience as part of our brand core. We can serve our customers in this way that nobody else can do better than us. Here's our mission. Here's our values. Here's our competencies, what we're really good at. And that wells up, that surfaces to this brand promise. Here's what we stand for. Here's what we're going to do for our customers that nobody else can do. We're going to fight for this promise. We're going to deliver on this promise together. And that becomes your pickleball. There's a set of terms around that. There's this group of people that you get to share in this compelling mission with. And you're getting to serve your customers really well together and make a difference. And there's a great sense of identity that can and should and would come with that if we thought about it in this way. So let's learn from pickleball in the sense of identity that we're getting there. Let's bring that sense of pride and identity back into the workplace a little bit more.
I love what you said about it's not about power, it's about knowledge. I think that's huge, not only in life, certainly in business, but also in how we relate to our customers or don't.
But if you've got folks that feel like they're way more important than the customer, you're playing with power. You're not playing with knowledge at that point. There's not the common ground that you need to get back to a safe place. And the circle of psychological safety is broken. And what do we do in environments like that, Nate? We go into self-preservation mode. You're going to serve you. You're going to protect you. You're going to absorb resources. You're going to trap knowledge. But suddenly my coworkers are the enemy. And suddenly the customer, I don't know them. I can't even think about them. Irrelevant right now because I have to focus on myself and my needs. That is the type of environment where we cannot do CX.
Absolutely. Man, speaking of kitchen and servings, let's talk about ice cream. I know you're a fan of Janarty's ice cream in Smyrna, Tennessee, yeah?
You did some research, Nate.
Hey, man, I've been stalking you for a while now. And I know that you really love the experience that they create. But just as we've been saying, that experience has to start with the employees. So can you tell our listeners what you love about Janarty's and what makes that experience so singular, and what big corporations and businesses can learn from this family-owned local business?
Oh my goodness. You're making me work over here, Dave. Let me do my best on that. So one of the things, you walk into Janarty, so I mean, community business, like through and through. They make it very clear with the way they've decorated the place with local art and with drawings of kids and just fun custom messages. It's a community place, kind of like how Starbucks is like that third home feel where you're coming in and you're like, hey, I can go to Starbucks on Fortress in Murfreesboro and it's going to feel a little bit different because it's an attribute of that community than the Starbucks in Delray Beach, Florida. But there's these consistent elements too that make it really reliable. I can go to a Starbucks anywhere in the world and get this experience, but it's going to be personalized in this community way as well, which makes it really fun to walk into different Starbucks. Janarty's amplifies that community element. And you come in and it's small batch ice cream. So they're doing these it's experimentation. This guy went to this special school to learn how to create ice cream in this strange way. And he just goes crazy with it. So every time you go in there, there's going to be all these different unique flavors of ice cream where he's trying stuff out and having a blast. And that's so infectious to the guests that are going to come in. What's he whipping up today? And it's just really fun. And so you're having a new experience every time, but it's also consistent in the sense of I'm getting this great community connection. The same people are in there and they're so kind and friendly. They're excited to share this experience with you. Those are consistent, but then there's that dynamic and fun and exciting variable too. So I mean, those psychological principles, that translates to enterprise businesses so well. The businesses that are kicking butt right now are the ones that are following the advice of Mark Schaefer, who just came out with Belonging to the Brand. Probably the greatest customer experience / marketing resource of the year by far. Wow. And it's just talking about how brands that are winning today, they're creating community. They've earned it in the house. Their employees like each other. They respect each other. They're in the kitchen. And they've earned the right to invite their customers in now to co-create. Like Janarty's is co-creating. Hey, have you ever tried to do this? Or I would love this flavor. And these enterprise businesses are creating these robust community vehicles in which customers are getting to co-create on the brand promise. Here's what we're trying to do together. I don't care what industry you're in. There's something you're trying to do to make the world a better place, to make people's lives better and easier. You're trying to serve, and you get to invite your customers into that process to co-create with them so that you can together serve the world better than you ever could have apart. I mean, that's CX amplified. Voice of customer is so much better. We're listening, we're learning in this community vehicle. Product and development and innovation is so much better because you're innovating alongside your very stakeholders that are using the product, that are earning you your word of mouth. Sales and marketing is amplified because suddenly you've got these ambassadors that are so loyal to you. They're co-creating with you and they're bringing like-minded people in, your group of customers that belong to you. They're bringing them into your community for you. And that's how sales and marketing is done through this customer-centric CX lens. So the implications are tremendous, Nate. in terms of the Janarty's community model amplified in today's global marketplace.
It reminds me of a tweet that you had that I resonated with. You said something to the effect of great CX starts with kindness and builds with competence. And I thought that was really powerful. That was awesome. I'm putting that on a t-shirt.
I did. It's that idea of kindness. We're serving together. We're locked in together. Community connection. Now let's build on competence.
And you talked about how you refer to care center agents or contact center agents or customer support agents, whatever you want to call them, as knowledge curators. And I love that. The problem is that it seems like especially nowadays, those folks who are on the front lines of customer experience are really getting overworked, and they're experiencing a tremendous amount of burnout because the curation of all of that knowledge from both brand and customer intersects in this one person. And a lot of times they're finding very, very negative experiences, and that's hard to do day in and day out. So how do brands help to supplement a healthy environment for these knowledge curators? Are there tools? Are there systems that can be put in place to help them not only be healthy, both physically and mentally, but how to serve customers better because they're not fried?
Gosh, what an important thing to be thinking about. Protecting our brand guardians.
Right. Right.
Making them free to serve, to use that Leslie O'Flahaven and Jenny Dempsey expression. They said free to help. Yeah. I love that philosophy. So it really is the practical element and then the more psychological element. So psychologically, we want to create a culture where people are generous with information, generous with knowledge. So if the circle of psychological safety is broken and it's back to self-preservation mode, people are going to hoard information because knowledge in their perception is power. And you break the customer service department in that type of scenario where you have to be sharing. You have to be getting smarter with every customer interaction. And it has to be coming back into a centralized knowledge engine and a good tool set. And I know you weren't looking for me to do this, but Sprinklr is one of those where it makes it easier for the agent to do what they want to do. It's a really good tool. But the reality is this, Nate, the average enterprise organization has 464 custom applications inside of it. Yeah. We have bastardized our tool sets to the point where the agents can't do what they want to do. They can't serve well. They're stuck. They're trapped in a fragmented digital ecosystem where it's hopeless for them to navigate and to be able to get the information they need to effectively serve. So we've got to bring some harmony back into that. We've got to get smart, good tools back in and rely on them for their larger feature set. Because that's what happens. We take advantage of like 5 to 10% of the tools we have. And people just get confused or they don't really understand what these tools can do. And so what do? They go in and get another one for a specific need.
Yep.
And I'm going to be lazy here, or I'm going to feel like I'm picking on people. That's lazy.
Right.
That's lazy. You're just trying to solve a problem by slapping another tool on it.
Yep. It's a lot of Band-Aids.
That's ruining. Oh my gosh. It's awful what happens in a customer service environment when we get those tool Band-Aids getting slapped on. I mean, we've got to have an ecosystem with a very effective CRM, great tools like Sprinklr that make information flow through and that allow agents to do the work well. We have to be very honest about that. So be honest about what your tool set looks like today. Is it overcomplicated? If yes, use like a Moscow method to get it back down to a good, reasonable environment. If you don't know what that is, definitely take a Google there. It's a very collaborative way to select an optimized tool set ecosystem. And that's going to really help you on the practical side, but don't forget about the culture side too. Are people being generous with knowledge? Here's a big one, Nate. Do we set up peers to compete with each other on metrics like CSAT and other things? Because if you're doing that, if you're putting your agents in a contentious relationship like that, no, they're not going to be generous with information.
Right.
So think about how you're motivating them. Are you motivating the team together to collaborate well? Is that where incentives are coming from? Is that the behaviors you're reinforcing? Because if most customer service leaders are honest with themselves, they're not.
You've spoken about friction fighters. in the past.
Ooh.
And you just kind of made me think of that. I wonder if you can unpack this idea for us of friction fighters. Who are these people and how do they affect the customer journey?
I mean, it's another form of a CX change coalition. So the reason I came up with that idea around friction fighters, and it's certainly like borrowed from a lot of things, including certainly the effortless experience by Matt Dixon. I mean, just proving the value of making it quick and easy for customers to get on their resolution path. Let's focus on that. But it's internal too. Like you talked about that burnout factor and how folks are prevented from doing their jobs really well because of internal friction. So we're trying to draw people into this work. But sometimes when we use all these terms around customer experience and the CX Change Coalition and voice of customer, we're kind of ostracizing people. We're making it feel like CX is kind of some other function, when what we're trying to do is invite people into the work to help us to get the momentum going so that we can all be participating together. And so using terms like friction fighters and collecting this little group of folks who are committed to fighting friction together. And it's a little credo. And hopefully you could share with the folks that are listening. I've developed this little like example PDF of like, I will share knowledge. I will help others to be able to share knowledge. Like finding things that are friction pockets in the business and committing together to release those friction pockets and doing it in kind of like a fun and exciting, motivating way and really ordaining that group of friction fighters to do some special stuff together to just make business easier, make it more fun, and make it so that people can serve customers really well. So that way you're not making CX about CX. You're making customer experience about the brand promise. You're inviting people into something like this friction fighter mentality, which is doing exactly what the CX function needs to be doing, but you're not confusing it with this separate set of language and terms and other things. You're focusing in on the intrinsic motivators for folks and focusing them on what really matters.
Man, I love that. I wanted to ask you one more thing before we run out of time. You mentioned in passing Donald Miller and StoryBrand before. I had the pleasure of going through that workshop experience with StoryBrand. Got to meet and hang out with Donald Miller, was a big hero of mine from when I was a teenager, and just found that so incredibly life-changing about how I thought about telling the story and the narrative of your brand from the perspective of a guide as opposed to, hey, look at us, we're the hero. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are about how brands can impact their customer experience by how they're telling their story.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, Nate, you would be better equipped to answer that question, right?
I just want your thoughts, because then, like, if you say something awesome, I'm going to repeat it like it's my own. You know,
perfect. Yeah, I mean, what I love about StoryBrand is that idea of turning things inside out. Because it's human nature for us to focus on ourselves and develop a very selfish lens of what it is that we're doing. So to help the business tell the story more effectively, it's thinking about, no, what is the customer facing right now? What is it that they're wrestling through that's preventing them from walking the journey that they want to walk, from getting to this promised land of their definition of success? And let's tell the story of how we can get them there. Unlike anybody else, like we are the most effective, most qualified, most fun, most exciting, most accelerated, whatever that attribute is or attributes, where you can get them there in the best, fastest way possible. That's the story that you get to tell. But you're putting the focus on them and their needs. You're putting yourself in their shoes instead of just toting the legendary elements of your brand.
Right.
And so it's a very organic, inside out approach to marketing. And I think if we were to take the origin of the StoryBrand and now combine that with the incredible research and work of Mark Schaefer around belonging to the brand and community, then that story becomes the community. And what the community is doing together, that story of co-creation and how we're together fulfilling the brand promise in these incredible ways. It's a story of celebration and how we unlocked and how we guided folks to that place in which we were able to celebrate together. That to me is the ultimate narrative.
Man, Nate, I love that so much. And we like to do a couple of book plugs during these conversations, and we're awaiting the publishing of your book, which I assume is in the works. So I assume that I'll be getting the first copy hot off the presses. But until then, How would you feel if we gave away the frictionless experience to anybody who comments on social with the hashtag CXWise about something that they took away from this conversation? So let's spread the frictionless experience to all of our listeners. What do you say?
It's the effortless experience is amazing.
I'm sorry, effortless experience is what I meant. I was thinking about your friction fighters.
And I hope I'm not going to bankrupt you, Nate, but I've got this sitting here. And I'd love to give one more book. Tribal Leadership is blowing me away right now.
Oh, really? Tribal Leadership? Who's the author?
It is so good. The author is Dave Logan, John King, and Haley Fisher Wright.
Tribal Leadership. Okay.
And so it's that idea of cultivating the internal community first and earning the right to invite your customers in to co-create. It's a level 4 or 5 tribe that's there, that has earned the right. And there's some very specific attributes and elements of that level 4 and 5 tribe that we have to unlock and earn over time. And most organizations are stuck somewhere around a level 2 tribe, which, I mean, level 1 is like, my life sucks. Everybody sucks. Level 2 is like, well, I'm okay, but everybody else still sucks. Level 3 is like, this is okay. This is okay. Level 4 is like, this is pretty cool. And we're doing something together. Level 5 is like, life is great. And we're co-creating. We're doing incredible things together. So until you work up to that level 4 and 5 tribe, you've not earned community yet. You're not ready to do it. You got to work on in the house, as Denise Leone would say. You got to get your internal community locked in and not being like super focused on themselves in self-preservation mode, being able to serve each other and look outward towards the customer, the headlights on instead of the dome light, philosophically. That's when we're ready to start to really jump into that community element.
Oh man, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much for that recommendation. Again, hashtag CXWise, and we will put that book in your hands. Nate Brown,
Thank you,
I could speak to you for hours upon hours upon hours about all things from ice cream to pickleball to headwear and to beard care. And I would love to do that perhaps on a later episode. But for now, I just want to say we've proven you wrong. Neophyte, no way, my man. You have made us all CX wiser. And I really appreciate your time. Nate Brown, thank you so much for being here.